of course, I wanted to talk about Steadman's wake, and everyone's making a big deal out of the fact that 20 years in between recording albums. What I'm wondering though is what were the advantages of that? What was the benefit that you found out from having that much of a gap between recordings?
It's a good question, because there were some benefits. Well, we recorded a record in the year 2000 called Old School Dropouts. I almost forgot the name of it. And it's a good collection of songs. And basically what that collection of songs were well-made demos, because we were getting ready to what would have been our last record for our record label, TVT Records, at the time, and they dropped us basically. Which is fine for a number of reasons. We did not have the best relationship with them. That happens. It's you've talked to bands. Every band has those problems. It's that, as a friend of mine in advertising told me once, it's the crucial juncture where art meets commerce.
Yeah.
It's like a really bad intersection,
Right.
A lot of wrecks. So anyways, so we had like a friend of ours, a guy named John Heems, who used to play in Let's Active, and he played in a band called Motorcaster. He's a really good musician, and he's really good recording guy and producer and engineer. And so he made these, like, it was fun because we basically made these demos into a record from four track cassette demos. Those. I mean, the company, I think it's called, I want to say TIAC, is the company that made the cassette 4-track. They're basically made to write songs on, but they make a digital version of the same thing now, so it still kind of exists. But anyways, so we had it. We made the records, we had no idea what we were doing. I mean, as far as like selling something on the internet in the year 2000, we could have used you back then. I don't know how old you were 20 years ago, but anyways, so yeah, I didn't there's good songs in there, but we just couldn't really get it out there.
Yeah.
And we'd play a few shows here. Anyway, so things kind of slowed down, and then we never stopped. We didn't quit. Like, we didn't break up or anything. We didn't stop playing. We just didn't play nearly as often. And there's I had 2 kids. There's a couple of kids. There was other things going on. It made it difficult to play music like we had been. And plus, it seemed kind of clear that the demand wasn't there for us to go do a month-long tour. I mean, just the way it goes.
Yeah.
So I guess it was, I don't know how many, it was maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And I was talking to David Connell. He was talking about some of the songs on that previous record. 2 or 3 or 4 of them, maybe 4 of them have shown up on this new album.
Right.
But he was like, these are good songs and they need a proper treatment, proper record. So that's where that started. Then Mike Connell had some songs he'd been working. So long story short, is we had enough material. We re-recorded, I don't know how much you've heard of it. Like that song Helium is on that older record.
Mm-hmm.
Walter, Universal Blue. So there's about 3 or 4 songs that are that we had that nobody ever heard. So that was sort of one of the benefits. And the other benefit was, the first thing we did is we went to Mitch Easter's studio in Kernersville called Fidelatorium. It was good to go there for a number of reasons, but mainly because we recorded our second album with him in 1987 at the drive-in, his parents' garage that was converted into a studio where all those famous REM records were made, and Let's Active, and you name it. Everybody recorded there. So all these years later, we went to his, state-of-the-art acoustically engineered, designed studio. And so that was kind of cool to go like right back into it with him. And then we did the rest of everything else that we like. Those were mostly basic tracks, maybe half the record. And then we go to a studio in Durham. I cannot. I'm forgetting the name. But this is so bad. I can't. I'll remember the name of the studio with John Climo.
Yeah.
But we would. So Mike and I would drive over there to Durham. Overdub Lane is the name of the studio.
Okay.
I knew I'd remember. And we would be talking, and he'd say, we don't have anybody. We don't have a record label. We don't have anybody breathing down our necks. We don't have a deadline. We don't have any specific time frame, because we have a lot of records that there's several songs on several of those records that just didn't come out anywhere near what we wanted. And you know what I mean? Hindsight is 2020, obviously, but I think we wanted to make sure this time that we all were good with everything that we recorded and mixed and mastered. So that's what we did. And everybody seems to be happy with it. So that was really kind of important. You know what I mean? To have an opportunity to do that. Because you don't always get to do that. There's always some kind of rush, and that's that business commerce conversation.
Right.
They don't understand what's taking so long. It doesn't work like other things.
Right.
It's music. It's different. It's not like I'm cutting the grass, It takes a little while.
Right.
So
right. No, I get that. And then along those lines, how have you changed as a singer?
That's another good question. Yeah. I guess one thing that I think we messed around with the keys of the songs so that I might not necessarily be singing in as high a register as I did like on a song like 74, 75, which is kind of like almost falsetto, So we played around with that, but also, I mean, if I was a guitar player, I could sit home and play guitar and practice,
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of real singers, like, I'll give you an example where Mike and David grew up they call it the Village District now. It used to be called Cameron Village. They changed the name of it.
Oh, yeah. I know Cameron Village.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That neighborhood back there. Their across the street neighbor was Willis Casey, who was a former NC State swimming coach, basketball coach, and I think athletic director, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
This is leading someplace. I promise. And his wife, Mrs. Casey, was a former, I don't know if she was an opera singer, but she was sang in New York on Broadway. An opera singer. She was a singer.
Wow.
And every morning they'd hear her out in the back stoop doing la 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 la. They're doing her scales.
Oh.
And I'm not going to be doing any scales. Nothing against it. You know what I mean? I'm just it's not my thing. So I was trying to do other things with people musically, where I'd sing or sing backup or sing lead, just whatever with various friends. And that was good for me to do because, like I was singing with some friends and I was singing a high harmony over, are you familiar with the band The Velt?
No.
From Raleigh. Anyways, the really good band. This the two twin brothers. One of the twins is the lead singer. He's got a great voice. So I found myself, he's like, sing a harmony. I'm singing a high harmony over him, which is like, what am I doing? I can't. This is too much. He's already up there. Anyway, so I was doing stuff like that. So that helped me, just to do different things and to try to push it. And so and even though I hadn't done a lot of singing in the last 20 years live, I feel more, I don't know. I feel more confident. I don't know. Maybe it's just being older. So that's how I see things have changed a little bit. But everybody, I mean, people are telling me when we play live, I sound like I did all these years ago, and that's all I can expect if they, they want to hear old songs. So
yeah,
so
well,
I get a mix of both.
Even with stuff like 74, 75, you never went ultra high. I mean, it's not like that.
Right. You're right.
You don't have like those Elton John Tiny Dancer moments where he's,
oh my God, no. Yeah. And the few times I've done anything like that, it was our third, I forget, it was a record called One Simple Word that we recorded in the studio in it's called Rockfield Studio. It's outside of Monmouth, Wales. It's a famous studio. We found out, like, Queen recorded there. Oasis, well, that was after we were there, but
yeah.
But anyways, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
And this guy was really, Hugh Jones is the producer, and he was really, I think he had it out for me. I mean, we got along fine. It was like, he was making me do stuff that I probably wouldn't have ordinarily done, which is fine. I was glad to do it, but I was harmonizing with myself a lot doing this. And these really, really crazy high notes that I didn't think I could hit. So that was good. But he would be like, "You're a gnat's hair away." Like, it was funny. And one recording, I was doing so many harmonies with myself on this one song that I was like, this is kind of like, I was thinking to myself in the vocal booth, this might be a little too much, you know what I mean? Like, and I said to him, I was joking when I said this, but I said, "What are we doing? Making a freaking association record?" And he got pissed off. And I was like, I'm just kidding. But it was like, there was lots of layers. So yeah, and some of those, I think a couple of the songs on that record, when we play live, I'd really be like, oh, here comes that song with that note. It's like that. It's just like the worst feeling in the world, because it's coming, and the more you realize it's coming, the more work. You know what I mean? You get work, and usually I'd be okay, but sometimes you'd be like a little rough and like, oh, I didn't work tonight.
Right.
But you don't want to be in that. You don't want to be in that position. You don't want to. You know what I mean? You don't want to.
Right.
So we missed. Yeah. Anyways, that's what.
But I always thought that was the extra challenge for bands that go the distance for the lead singer, because a guitar can always be tuned to sound like the guitar that was on the album.
Yeah.
And whereas, but at the same time, I mean, at least hearing you talk right now, you've got a much deeper, more resonant, bottom end, bass end going on.
I'm a baritone. So. That's what a woman told me. I had surgery again. Everything is 20 some odd years ago. Of course. I had a intestinal thing. Anyways, got through that and went to band practice. And it was the other time that I had a situation where I went up to the microphone and nothing came out. So I, the collection of muscles and the diaphragm and stuff that had been cut through. Yeah, this is how long ago it was before they had the laparoscopic stuff. Had not healed properly, so I needed to go talk. So anyways, I went to Meredith College and spoke, and I had this woman who was amazing, who had actually performed on Broadway, was a great singer, and she said, "You're a baritone." And I was like, I figured I was, but they got me, on these songs, I go up. Yeah. And I'm finding out that I'm not alone in that position. There's here another perfect example is Tony Bennett. He's a tenor, natural, but when he was starting out, and he was like a singing waiter. Imagine that gig.
No, hours.
That's multitasking. I can't do that. I can't do that. But he would have, because of the popularity of Bing Crosby, he was finding himself always singing in a lower register. Which wasn't natural for him, but that probably made him a better singer because he's got such a crazy range. So there's that. So anyways, that's a very interesting point, because at one I don't know when this was. This is probably, we weren't playing that often, and I found I was having trouble hitting some notes on specific songs in the set. And I was like, man, I got to do something because I'm having trouble here. And we weren't playing that often, but just enough to where it mattered. And so I don't know if you play guitar or anything, but you can take a regular 6-string guitar that's in standard tuning and tune it a half step down, half whatever. So not all of it, the main guitar is because of me being the prima donna singer. You guys, it's too hot, Anyway, everybody's guitar is tuned a half step down, which is kind of it's a Beatles thing. Actually, they did a lot of that. So we fixed that. I felt bad not singing in the original key on some of the songs from the record, but it was hard. And when I did it when I was 30 something, I mean, my God. So we fixed that issue.
Anyways, I don't know. There's a lot of bands that do that now, because I mean, you have to, the human voice is not meant to stay at that height for that long. And so
no, I don't think so. I mean, if the flip side is the longer you do it, the more you kind of figure out how to sing specific notes and songs. But so sometimes, well, I mean, ever since that happened, there's capos. Everybody's working on ideas with.
Right.
Mike has songs with the capo. The guitar that's tuned half step down, but the capo's on the fourth. And like a couple of times when that capo was on the wrong fret.
Oh.
We started. The song is in the wrong key, but it's which I love. I mean, I think it's hilarious. I just start singing along. I don't know what key it's in. I'm just like, hear it. And then everybody goes like boing, boing, going. Right. Oh, that's you're on the wrong. So it can get complicated. Anyways, but and then you're right. It is not. It is. I'm trying to think of like Robert Plant. What a great vocalist, but at some point he can't. Those on like Whole Lot of Love, and those first few records.
Oh God, no!
He's screaming. I mean, it's beautiful. His voice is beautiful. You can't do that forever.
No. Incidentally, we got tickets to see him and Alison Krauss when they come to.
When's that?
This June in Coca Booth.
Man, I love what they do.
Yeah,
it's really cool. What a interesting, cool. I don't know how that came about, but it works. Boy, does it ever work? She's great. She's amazing.
Yeah, have you seen
her?
Have you seen her
before?
I haven't seen the two of them before. We saw Alison Krauss and Union Station when they played Coca Booth a few years back.
Is that her main band?
Yeah.
Okay, that's more.
Cool.
Yeah, she's really, really good. I'm just interested in how he found her, how they met up. I guess I could look it up, but I'm just curious.
I don't know exactly how they met, but I know the kind of the bridge for them in organizing it all was T-Bone Burnett.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
I remember seeing some interview where it's like they decided they wanted to collaborate, and so Robert sent her some songs like, "Oh, I'd like to cover these," and she's like, cool. Nah. And so she sent him some songs, and he's like, "Nah." And then T-Bone picked out, and he's like, "No, this is what you guys should do." And they're like, "Oh, okay." He knows.
You need a guy like that.
Yeah,
you need that guy. Yeah, he's amazing. I mean, he I don't know if you're a movie fan. I like that movie Inside Llewyn Davis, that Coen Brothers movie. Where it's set in the early 60s folk scene in New York, Gertie's, whatever. Anyway, T-Bone Burnett had a lot to do with that, with what they do with music and that makes a lot of sense.
And Alison Krauss and Union Station did most of the music for "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?"
Is that right? See, I didn't know that. That makes perfect sense then. Yeah, because I mean, I know the guys were like, that wasn't really George Clooney singing, but
no, it was
somebody.
Jerry or it's the male lead singer from Union Station.
See, I didn't know that, and that makes perfect sense. So that's a good match.
Yeah.
Robert Plant came to I don't know what was going on. I guess he came to tour or was doing something. This is back in 1980, whatever.
Okay.
And he had heard of or read about or listened to records produced by Mitch Easter.
Okay.
So Mitch Easter now, I mean, when we went to the drive-in studio the first time, I mean, well, the only time, but it was all those years ago, I was amazed at like this wall of like orange amps and giant Marshalls, and I actually made the mistake of like when he was in the kitchen, I was like strummed, and it was like it knocked me over.
Oh.
You know,
yeah.
I mean, he's a rock guy, so he gets word that Mitch Easter's coming. Excuse me, he gets word that Robert Plant's coming to Winston-Salem because he wants to meet Mitch.
No.
I mean, that's how in tune to new music he was, and probably still is. Robert Plant, that is. I bet Mitch. I've never talked to Mitch about that. I bet he was probably nervous. I would have been nervous as shit if Robert Plant came into my house. You know?
Yeah.
And he seems like, I'm sure he's a really chill guy. But well, good. That's in June, man. That sounds like a fun show.
Yeah.
I like that. I like playing it. I like that. Coca booth. I like that amphitheater, that stage, and the way it's set up. It's nice. It's really well run, at least in my experience.
Yeah. No, it's a great venue.
Yeah.
And then, you know, being the lead singer, but yet a lot of the songs have been written by other members of the band.
Yeah.
I was also curious, have there ever been points when, let's say, Mike or whoever gives you a song and then you have conflicting ideas over how something should be phrased or how it should be sung or how it should be
it's a good question, because yes, that's gonna come up.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry, I keep getting these stupid messages. I'm trying to remember what like a specific example. Not that often, because he'd have a melody, he'd have the vocal melody pretty much set, and it's one of those deals where it seems like he usually writes a chord progression and comes up with a vocal melody and then writes the lyrics to fit the melody.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, whenever I try to write something, that's kind of the approach I take. Maybe I think there maybe been a time where I'm like, that's a pretty high note, you know, like that, but nothing too, he'd either send me a cassette of him saying I mean, shoot, I before I was even in the band and I was sort of trying to get in the band, I was like, why doesn't he sing? He can sing, you know. But he didn't want to sing. I mean, I can relate to, I can understand he just wants to play guitar. I can dig that. But
yeah,
I'm trying to think of a specific, like there. Here's the analogy that always seems to pop into my head. It's Pete Townsend and Roger Daltrey, right?
Yeah.
Pete Townsend. I mean, he records proper, like, good sounding demos, which have been subsequently released. And I think even to this day, Roger Daltrey has a totally different voice than Pete.
Yeah.
He's like, no, I don't want you. You get out of here. I got to sing. You. And I went through a little period, probably a longer period than I'd like to admit, of like, get out of here. You know, I know the song, you know, whatever. But then I all I needed to do was to start trying, I wrote a few songs and recorded some, and then I understood the process from the point of view of a songwriter.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have it in your head, and a lot of times, for whatever reason, whatever's in your head doesn't translate to the tape or the whatever the recording device is, and that can be frustrating. So after I went through that process of learning how to do that and seeing what happens, I'm a lot more I'm even more cooperative, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Than any times I might not have been. He probably remembers some situations that I might have blocked out. But anyways, yeah, that's a good question. But there's also, like, sometimes there's nothing wrong with tension. I mean, tension I think can help performance or the process in the creative process. I mean, people wouldn't think so, but there's something to it. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't recommend it daily.
Yeah. Well,
you know what I'm saying? Like, it kind of, there's something about a certain type of song that you get worked up and then you sing it and you had the adrenaline go, you know, there's something about that I think is viable, you know?
Yeah. Well, you know, you gave the best example. The Who channeled their anger and animosity into some pretty amazing albums.
I mean, I to this day am still fascinated by Pictures of Lily. You know, I mean, I tried to learn how to play that and sing it on guitar just in the, you know, back room, and it's so hard to play. I mean, for someone like me especially. But yeah, no, they were punk rock. I thought they were kind of a punk rock band at the beginning. I mean, very much. In that, when the Sex Pistols and the Clash and those bands came around, he was one of the, I think him, Pete Townsend, that is, and maybe Mark Bowen, T-Rex, and Bowie. Those guys really didn't get much guff from those guys in 1977 on all this, because they really let a lot of the Pink Floyds and the Emerson, Lake and Palmers have it. Yeah, and maybe rightfully so, but something about Townsend, they were like, "Nah, he's all right." Because I mean, the Pistols used to do "Can't Explain," or Substitute. One of those two. They used to record. They used to play live. I mean, you know, there you have it. But I don't know how I got off on that tangent. But yeah, I mean, of course, they smashed their instruments too. They were
right.
You know, running to the they were running to the guitar store after the gig.
Right.
But
yeah. Or one of my favorites was God. I read this story. I think it was the Who were performing at like the Fillmore East, and there was some sort of like, I don't know, bomb scare, drug raid, whatever it was.
Oh, in the venue. Wow.
Yeah. And guys, you know, police came rushing in, and there was one guy who I guess was like a plainclothes policeman who went running onto the stage, and without like missing a note, Pete Townsend just like kicked him square in the chest.
Oh yeah,
landed right on the floor. Just
he's done that a couple of times. He says, I think the quote was, "Don't come near me if I'm out there doing it." Don't. And you know, the famous stories, I think they obviously got cut from the movie, but in Woodstock, Abby Hoffman wanted to get up on stage and do a rant, and I think he tried to take Pete's guitar from him.
Oh God.
And Pete whacked him in the head with it. I mean, it's a famous story. He hit him square in the head. He's like, "Oh, freaking hippies and mud. I don't." They hated it, you know. It's so funny. Of course, they're like, you know, working class English guys. They don't know.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Really good rock band, you know. But I mean, I wouldn't dream. I'm plainclothes cop or not, I wouldn't go near that guy when he's.
Yeah,
I love him. I mean, he's one of my favorites. He's way up there. He's one of the best. But
and then, so I'm curious about, you know, I've only lived in this the Triangle area for like 14 years.
That's pretty long.
Yeah, but you know, I didn't grow up here. I grew up in California, and so
whereabouts?
A suburb of Los Angeles.
Yeah, we have friends from UNC who work in the TV and film industry who live out there. A bunch of them.
Okay,
who are all our age roughly. So yeah, we recorded out there. But go ahead. I'm sorry, I'm going off on a tangent.
No. It's just, and you know, there's been infinite numbers of bands from Los Angeles and San Francisco and New York and all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
You don't often hear about bands from this area, you know, with notable exceptions. And I'm just wondering, did growing up, forming a band in this area, how did it influence you guys?
That's a great question. Well, first of all, probably in the early 80s, 81, 82 and now those other guys, when I say those other guys, I mean Mike and David and George Huntley.
Yeah.
And our former manager all went to UNC. Mike met our former manager, Tom, in law school. Meanwhile, I was at ECU. I was on the swim team. and I was getting into all this new music that was coming out and started hearing about these bands from North Carolina, like the DBs.
Yeah,
Let's Active.
I interviewed
Peter Holtz. You talked to Holtzapfel?
Yeah, I interviewed him 2019. We
oh, he's great.
Yeah,
he's great. Those guys are great. They're amazing. Peter has opened for us a couple of times in the last 5 or 6 months. He's great. He's incredibly talented, and he's one of the funniest guys I know. He's very funny.
Yeah.
Anyways,
yeah.
They were like this idyllic. I mean, meanwhile, I'm like an hour. I'm a couple hours away, and my best friend growing up was playing drums with Mike and David. So with all those different, and REM, like, all these Southern bands, like, well, these guys can get in a van and drive around and do this. What, shoot, man, maybe we can do it. And that was kind of to me, that was the influence. And there's a musical influence as far as guitar pop or power pop or Beatles influence type musics, or more accurately, British Invasion, song bands and the Kinks and the like. So, and there's got to be something about the humidity, and the pace of. I mean, people notice it when I have friends who live in up north, New York or Boston or Minneapolis, and they're like, "It's a different thing. There's a different vibe here." I'm like, "Oh yeah," I mean, there's never ever any conversation never came up of like, should we move? Maybe we should move to Los Angeles or New York we're just not going anywhere. And the DBs did that. They moved to Hoboken. But I think I might have this wrong. I hope I don't. But I know that Chris Stamey had moved up there maybe first, because those guys were all big fans of Big Star. And I mean, Big Star, that's, we all know the story of like how they should have been massive, but that's the way that goes. But so he was playing bass with Alex Chilton, a 3-piece. So maybe that's what kind of drew the other guys up to Hoboken. Man, just the guys in the DBs are so cool. They're such nice guys. I never really, I'm trying to remember who I haven't met. Anyways, but like we played at, there's a place called Maxwell's in Hoboken that is a famous club that I remember that some of those guys were there, and I was like, made me nervous. Like I think some of the guys in the DBs, no, they're not. Right. Like I think they're there, and that, I mean, and you would think just the playing for the first time playing a show in that famous club would be enough, but no, that's what really good. Knowing that our North Carolina guys were there, so that was cool. But I'm trying to think of like, but there's another thing that I noticed that when I moved to Raleigh back, I left ECU in '84 and moved back to Raleigh, and I missed the initial sort of what people would refer to as like the hardcore punk scene, where we're COC right here. Can you see it? Yeah. A lot of bands were, initially putting, it was a great music scene, a great community. And by the time I got here, there was starting to be more post-punk, like people writing more melodic tunes, or there was a band called the Leads that had like, they were the best, man. These guys dressed as mods. They drove scooters, and they played like, kind of like a Jam meets the Who type show. Okay. Really cool. I wouldn't know how to track those guys down, but I wanted to remind them all these years later how much I love that. But so I was like playing catch up with like what was going on, and a lot of the people that had maybe they had people that come from other cities to go to school at NC State, or just people I didn't know from before I went to college. So a lot of people who are really into British music, Anglophile.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm one. I'm into a lot of stuff, but like a lot of these guys, a lot of my friends are into, and we're into, and still are into, Echo and the Bunnymen and the Cure and the Chameleons, and but also going back to, again, the British invasion thing.
Right.
And I've yet to come across a music scene, whatever you want to call it, anywhere. I mean, I've seen it here and there in the Southeast or maybe up north, but like there's really something about maybe the lineage and of Anglo-Saxon, I don't know, settlers early on. British music is really where it's at and you can hear that in our first couple of records. And so that was a major influence, because I was like, oh, I like that, and there were bands I never heard. I mean, I remember, who's Echo and the Bunnymen? Like, I was clueless with some of this stuff, because there was no college radio station at ECU. And really all I ever heard, not to harsh on the area or the school, but because my daughter goes to school there.
Okay.
But I mean, I hear Journey coming out of the freaking windows of the dorms. I'm like, come on, enough with the Journey. All right, guys. No offense, but I mean, and the Lover Boy, it drove me crazy. Of course, now I want to cover one of their songs, but that's
right.
You know how that works.
Yeah.
But like I got really kind of beat down by that stuff, and so I had to find. I was looking for my people.
Yeah.
Like, that guy's great. Sort of a punk rock new wave haircut. Maybe I should go talk to him.
Right. Well, I mean, there's the other thing is, to explore the history of the Connells is, you constantly hear the term college radio mentioned again and again and again.
Yeah.
And that was a thing growing up in LA. It's like, really? There's colleges with radio stations? Because and even when I got to college in Los Angeles, we had a radio station, but if you were more than 5 feet away, you weren't going to get it, because
like a 4 foot radio tower.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It might have just been, cups connected with string at that point.
Yeah. Because that is not that. I found out that was going on tour. That's not an unusual scenario for a college radio station. Thank God for the internet on that end,
Yeah, I guess. But I mean, in Los Angeles, there were, at the time, there were over 80 radio stations, professional stations on the dial. There was no
80 commercial stations. That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah. This was late 80s, early 90s. And, it was, and so, I found out.
It's probably similar to what I was experiencing.
Yeah. And so it's like, what? And
except for K-Rock. K-Rock played good stuff. We used to go do interviews there before we played shows in Los Angeles. They seemed to play cool stuff, but I know what you're saying. Everything else was like, of course, they just come out of the hair metal thing, right? And but I see what you're saying. I think I used to get a little grumpy about the college radio tag or whatever, and I was like, wait a second, if it wasn't for college radio stations, we couldn't have toured. There's no way, because we'd send our records to wherever we were going on this upcoming. I mean, I remember we used to do a lot of like long weekends. And getting in the van for the first time for a month, boy, that was an eye-opening experience. I mean, I've told this story before, but I think we had played. You get like, we used to get a lot of crap for playing fraternity parties. Our friends were like, what are you doing? Like, man, we do this party. We can pay for a week of gas.
Yeah.
On this, whatever.
Right.
And we played a show at Salem College in Winston-Salem. At the time, it was a women's college only. I don't know if that's still the case, but
I think it still is, actually.
Yeah, it's a cool place. It was fun.
We had
a great time, and they gave us a cooler. It was part of our
nice.
And they had like the Connells, with like a magic. It was awesome. And I remember, like, maybe a few days later, we're on our way west somewhere, and somebody got hungry. We started getting hungry. We had this cooler, and we had cans of tuna and peanut butter.
Yeah,
like it was pretty
staples.
Bare. Yeah, the basics. And there was an argument about whether or not I stayed out of the argument. I just wanted to eat. It was I want to put relish. We're going to put relish in the tuna. What? We're going to do what? It was like turned into that. It was like screaming, and I was like, "What have I got myself into?" But it was just, that's the way it is. You're together all the time.
Yeah.
And, 8 hours sometimes in a van. So there's going to be, people are going to get
right. Right. Right.
I know I did. But I don't know if I answered your college radio question, but
no, it was more of an observation, and and it's like discovering all these bands, eventually that were put forth by college radio. It's like, I did not have a chance growing up where I didn't have access to this. And
you probably really would have to have searched. And you said that you found a station, but you can barely hear it.
Or
the WKNC, it's NC State, for the longest time played. It seemed that their format was like speed metal, or just like hard, fast metal.
Yeah,
it was metal rock, or if it was punk rock or whatever. And I love that stuff. I mean, I've heard about bands I would not have ordinarily have heard about, but that format changed. I forget when that was, but to a more, what you would consider a more sort of standard college radio format.
Yeah.
And so I had sort of the same thing going on here and in Greenville. I don't think I could pick up WXYC in Chapel Hill because of the same problem.
Right.
Tower. It's funny, but they come in and out. That again. We made friends through this network of touring that I still have. I'm still in touch with. I still see sometimes, which says, to me, that's like one of the best parts of the whole thing is, having people with like minds and who live in much larger cities or in the Midwest or whatever. And so that was, and then I remember watching things slowly change, where what would have been a classic rock radio station had changed their format to what they called modern rock. I guess that's what they called it. And we heard a lot of different terms. It was college radio. We used to hear new music. They're playing new music. And there would be new music nights on Monday or Tuesday nights. Like in Kalamazoo, Michigan, we used to play a place there called, these are the weird things that I remember. The Club Soda, it was called. And it was a great crowd because they all came to see a certain type of music, playing it. But then I was talking to some other musicians about like there was new music, alternative, college radio. Then for a while, briefly, they were calling it progressive, which is like, wait a second.
No.
That's already taken.
Yeah.
It's already taken.
And it sounds nothing like this.
No, it doesn't sound like Rush.
Right, yeah.
It's just hilarious. But I think I'm probably repeating myself on these whenever I do an interview, but I just can't, because I'm hearing that college radio stations are sort of like, things are slipping. There's not as many of them. Sort of the standard, some of the gold standard stations aren't as active. I don't know. It's just part of the technology that exists, and you can't really get.
Yeah, well, hell, people aren't listening to mainstream radio stations anymore.
Actually, yeah. Here, I'll tell you a quick little story. So I went to somewhere like I want to say it was like New Mexico, Santa Fe, or
okay,
maybe in Arizona. I forget. Anyways, I just remember it was out in the desert. So we did sound check, and I got in a cab, and I went to the radio station to do an interview. And those guys are great. They're super nice. They're promoting the show, blah blah blah. And I was sitting like in a waiting area to go do the interview, and I looked behind this filing cabinet. They just changed their format, to this modern rock, and I could see behind the filing cabinet like the REO Speedwagon poster and the journey. But I was like, oh, they just changed everything. And that happened, I saw that happen a lot. Like, radio stations playing us in somewhere in Colorado. It wasn't Denver or Boulder. It was Colorado Springs, maybe. I forget what town it was, but so we booked a gig at this club in this town, and by the time we got there, the radio station had changed our format to country. So in 2 weeks period, it changed. I mean, we still had a lot of people there, and it was fine, but it was just like, wow, what do you know about that? So
what are you gonna do? Because I worked at a radio station in Santa Barbara, and
oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. I like Santa Barbara. That's a nice town, as I recall.
Yeah. But the best part was eventually the station was sold.
Right. Yeah.
But we had 1 week, and they said, all right, as long as you don't mention the sale, you can play anything you want.
You can play. Oh, that must have been a blast.
We were bringing in, stuff from home, because there was, hey,
you were bringing in records from home.
Because it was, and people are calling, you guys have never sounded better, And,
of course, right? Isn't that the way it goes? I love that.
And
don't cuss and play whatever you want for a week.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
That was
it's kind of a bummer though too, but I'm glad you got to do that. You had a week of freedom. That's nice. Yeah.
And just knowing, okay, it'll never get better than this, but at least I got a taste that some people never ever get a taste of.
Ever.
So
no, it's a weird business. I mean, we have a friend who used to be a DJ here, and he moved to, I want to say, San Luis Obispo, maybe.
Oh yeah.
Sacramento, around there. He helped us get a gig. Bob the Blade from WRDU. I don't know if that rings a bell. Great guy.
Okay.
Solid. He was really very supportive of my band and other local bands. And they had I think they had a Sunday night where they would play more local music. That's how how that works.
Yeah.
And he had moved to I want to say Sacramento, San Luis Obispo. And we all went and did an interview with him at that station. And it was a nice radio station, I'll say. And we ended up playing, we headlined a battle of the bands. We weren't participating. We were just the band that played after.
Okay, I get it. Yeah.
That was an interesting gig. Yeah, that was funny. But anyways, I've seen people move all over the country to keep to maintain this career, because that's the way. It's like doing the news, the local news. That's very similar. The markets, you try to get to the next market. So anyways, it's fascinating to me. But we used to spend we would on those first tours out west, you start realizing there's not as many cities around. There's a lot of open space.
Yes.
Not many dates booked.
Right.
So we'd have to find stuff to do. And I remember we went to Santa Barbara and found a winery. Spent the morning walking around drinking free wine. You got to be creative with these things. Because we had a couple days before we had to go to whatever San Francisco. It was like there's all these gaps of time, and that's kind of when it's fun. But you don't want to be that. You want to be a little busier than that when you're because you're bleeding money.
Yeah.